Dr. Power, your guests have arrived.
Oh, hi, Bonnicastle. Hi, come on in.
Thanks.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, Terry.
Well, good.
Hot
The election last night bother you at all?
Yeah, hot off the heels. I stayed up too late for sure, and I'm not sure why, because I knew it wasn't really going to end.
This whole part went to bed. I think it was 43 or 44 to 39. I said, that's it, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, and they were so close, which was, I mean, it was exciting because it was so close, and then it was also a bit of a denouement because we don't really get a result.
Yeah.
But I was happy for the Greens. You know, they had a big night. That was good for them. But as a person on the left, not sure how keen I am on a third viable party all of a sudden in the province. No. I'd be really happy with that if we had a fourth party, a further right party, and then that would split the vote four ways, and I think would make for very interesting elections in BC.
You want to look like France.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't even mind that idea where you might even have a race where you weed some of them out as you go.
Yeah.
And if you can't make it past the benchmark, then we end up with two parties, but they're the two parties that made it past some preliminary voting. I think that's an interesting method.
Good point. Well, we have to wait a little bit. I think there's 10 days for the absent ballots get counted, and I think Comox Valley, Courtney Comox.
Yes, that's a very interesting
recount up there.
Yeah.
So,
when we have absentee ballots and a lot of folks out on the ship. So
we got another week to wait. Folks, this is Dave Adams. Dave is Bonnicastle, and I thought I'd introduce him to you today. Dave and I have been banging away at this now for 8 or 9 years, and a fabulous individual and takes good care of us. And I've often mentioned, it was Jerry Kelly who once mentioned one of our very early presidents that he referred to professors as sort of like the top guns around here, but frankly it wouldn't be possible to stay in the air without folks like Dave that sort of bang away for us and keep us flying. And there's a whole bunch of people you don't see behind the scenes that make this happen, the program office, etc. So to all those folks, as we wind down our course today, I want to say thank you and making it all possible. So thank you, David.
No problem. Pleasure to work with you, Terry.
Good.
Week 8. Time for the news.
Pax Vobiscum.
All right.
Well, thanks, Dave. Well, let's get underway if we can, folks. It's week 8, our last week together, and certainly mixed feelings have certainly grown, and I enjoy these interactions that we have. It's been very valuable for me, and I hope you get something back out of it as well. Certainly, this week I want to talk a little bit about what it's on. This is the wrap-up week for the course. Just to set the stage, when you go in and look at the little waterfall method I've given you, you sort of get your values straight as actually who you are, what's important in life, if you're setting up your organization or company, and then you take those values and you look at the 3 C's, those 3 little balls that come together, and try to get that market segmentation, that little sweet spot that's yours. Find some data, drop it on the table, applying some of the models we've got to populate those three spheres in the area that you're interested in your particular industry. Draw some conclusions from it, and then you start the process of designing a strategic plan. And the waterfall method gives a sense it's kind of linear in process, but it's not. Most you have plans, so it's more of an iterative process. You zoom in and zoom out as need. The world shifts, Trump gets elected, come back and visit your strategy where you think you need to tweak. It's that little sailboat that you pull on the jib here and a pull on the jib there, and hopefully all you'll need is retail changes, not wholesale changes. They're completely apart. But look at the waterfall method. It's one I use as a good guideline to make sure you don't miss anything, and takes you down the different steps, right straight down to the action plans as to start dates, end dates, FTEs required, etc. You do it all. And I've got available, I put together a little template that just has headings. They want to do a strategic plan, a business plan, a marketing plan. The headings are in there, the tools that would apply for each one of those sort of headings there. And I guess I could make it available if anybody's interested. In fact, maybe I'll send it out to you so everybody gets a copy if you're rather than send me in emails. But I'll get you the template that you may find helpful in your OMPs and that if you have to put a plan of some description together. I'll send it out. Papers back. Sandy and I are working diligently on those, getting them ready for you. We'll have them back before Friday. Far more feedback and data than you would get just off the briefcase. But I want you to have sort of the full Monty to take with you in your kit bag or for your OMPs if you have to do it to get a sense how much detail you can go in. But they're coming back. The papers are starting to look pretty good as we go through it. The exam, although I've talked about it just one more time, closed book, 2 parts, 50% on the case. I'll give you the case on Monday, which is, if you're opening this up on Monday, you should have it today or in a few minutes. which will be the actual case, blacked out sort of the actual questions, but it'll give you a sense of the framework, the number of questions, the value of the questions, and 50% is a case. You know the case, talk to your colleagues, bounce it around, get a sense of what the questions might be, practice some tools. The point is when you go in for the exam, the temperature level should be down, you have a pretty good sense of what it's all about, and I can't foresee anybody stumbling or having a difficult time with it, and I want you all to succeed. Both Sandy and I want to do that. Interesting story today was the oil. The Saudis and the OPEC nations, you recall a number of months ago, they got together and artificially have reduced the supply of oil to bring the price up for oil because Russia and Saudi and other OPEC nations want higher prices for their oil. Today it's running, I think last time I looked, around $46.25, less than $50 a barrel, and so it's softening. And Iran, by the way, is not cooperating in that. It's a Shiite-Sunni conflict going on, so they're trying to increase their total production from the 3 range up to the 5 million barrels a day. And so anyway, the Saudis have got together and they're proposing that they'll continue this constriction, if you will, of the supply by 1.5 million barrels a day in order to keep the pressure on oil to keep it up. But I think short of a black swan event, that's not going to make any difference to us. I think with the advent of fossil fuels and alternative energy, fossil fuels down, alternative energy coming in, increasingly daily, the demand for fuel is going down. And the other big thing that happened, of course, is just off Texas, they discovered the mother of all oil fields about 4 or 5 months ago. And it's right there on the door of Mobile, Alabama, where they do all the processing. It couldn't be a sweeter startup for them. It's very easy to recover. And they've got this oil supply. So America is self-sufficient in oil, and they don't need Venezuelan oil, and they don't need the Saudi oil anymore. China does, of course, but it's a very disruptive industry that we need to be watching. A number of you have asked for. I don't. Just 1 second. I'll get it. There. So a number of you have asked for what magazines and things I recommend, and certainly you've got my thoughts on the Globe and Mail. That as much as I miss it, I'm still holding out just because I'm frankly pissed off with them at their editorial policy on Trump. But having said that, I read with some regularity Bloomberg Business Week. It's almost like the high school papers. It's not necessarily laid out in a neat format, but it's just packed with good, hard-hitting information on business and some of the global economic events that's going on. One here in South Korea's high-value targets. It's a great little magazine, a fast little read, and I recommend that to you weekly, and it's worth signing up for. The other one is one of my favorites. It's called Foreign Affairs, and they have a student rate, which you could probably qualify for. It makes it very cheap. Off the top of my head, it's $25, $35 for the year for 6 issues for students if you go in and look at it. But what I liked, I read it from cover to cover every month or so when it comes out, and I couldn't understand why I was reading it from cover to cover. And finally it dawned on me they recognize the demographic as old farts like me, and as a result the fonts are like size 14 font in there, so you almost need your glasses to read it. It's just a treat to read rather than strain. So it's those are 2 magazines that I look at which with some regularity. In the news this week, we have the story about increasingly retailers are launching e-commerce membership programs. Amazon and others has upfront fee that you pay and then get free deliveries. And it is working and working in spades. And so a number of businesses are hopping on that to take advantage. In Amazon's case, they find Prime members that sign up for this. They spend more than $200 on Amazon over a 90-day period, more than they would had they not spent it. So it's they find that it's gone up quite a lot on their sales, and it is killing the retail market because the regular retail people can't compete. Particularly good in online groceries. The free delivery, lower prices. 74% of the U.S. consumers say that free delivery motivates them to shop online, and 50% say the lower prices, according to the Boston Consulting Group. So we should look at that innovation of this free delivery online shopping. It's exponentially growing, and it comes at a cost of the bricks and mortar places in the malls. From Stratfor, which is a good reporting service, they talked to us this week about the financial sector is undergoing reform in China, and they're completely trying to revamp, clean up, get rid of the corruption, get rid of the all the other regulatory systems that are outdated. And they're doing this for a reason, just to clean up their act, because increasingly China is becoming an alternative to the American vehicle currency. And the more the demand-supply curve gets impacted, the more people put the less demand for the U.S. dollar to pay for oil and goods and services, and the more it swings over to other vehicle currencies, China being one of those, or a basket of currencies, or gold or bitcoins, lessens the demand for American. And so I think it's part of their strategy to continue down that road to see the American currency be replaced by the Chinese currency, and they're getting their act cleaned up to make that happen. From The Economist, Israeli politics was interesting to me, that in the past you had, from the longest while back, like Moshe Dayan in the '67 war, had a patch, General Tankor, all these guys right up become the politicians for Israel up to the past. But what's happened to recent date is now a handful of high-tech entrepreneurs are now vying for national leadership. So it's going from the old guard, from the military running Israel, to entrepreneur, innovative young people. And what struck me, you may recall last week, Zuckerberg was going around the countryside wearing a suit for the first time instead of the Steve Jobs T-shirt. He was actually dressed in a suit, going out almost, a number of you on the site launched as he running for president. And so he's just, Zuckerberg's just repeating what the folks in Israel are saying at the same time. This was disturbing, and the EU and English, and this is a pure quote, "Slowly but surely, English is losing its importance," quipped Jean-Claude Juncker, President of the European Commission, before switching to French to make a speech last week at the Commission. And I did some looking up, and he's wrong, that's not the case. Since the EU has enlarged up to 28 nations, according to the data I have, there's been a switch from French to English. 97% of all the secondary students outside Britain study English, 34% learn French, and 23% learn German. And so I think he's wrong on that, but it shows the mental model and the disdain he has for the English language. And of course with BRICS, the British exit from the European Union, you can see the tension starting to rise. We watch for that. In Tel Aviv, something quite disturbing that came out the other day, a report that North Korea is secretly, or maybe secretly, assembling the capability to take out the U.S. homeland based on EMP, electrical pulse, magnetic pulse. Can knock out all the computer chips and robot cars and all those sort of things, and turn the military blind, because the American military and the Canadian military, to a lesser extent, are dependent upon computers. And an EMP knocks those out, it fries them, like the Carrington event of 100 years or so ago. And they talk about this happening, and it's Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, P-R-Y. He's the Executive Director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security as the Chief of Staff for the Congressional EMP Commission for America. So it came from pretty good authority. And so his concern is that North Koreans have 2 satellites currently orbiting over the U.S. We've talked about one of those, didn't know the second one up, and now we have a second one up. We don't know what they're for, but they're going over our heads 100 miles up a couple times a day. And he said that it's almost in a position that they could call this cyber version of the battleship diplomacy, that America is sending all its carrier groups into the area of the Korean peninsula, in that area, and Kim Jong-un may well have, floating above the head, in a cyber sense, the ability to respond. And if the point, when I looked at it, it's almost from the old Soviet model. The Soviet had a model like that too, that they were going to base it on EMPs, and what they found is that the normal trajectory for missiles coming in, they're like 45 to get the maximum range of them. They come off at 45 angle, 45 degrees, and come at you, but they're trackable. You get a trace of them coming in, and you can respond to that. But with satellites, quite deliberately, what the North Koreans and what the Soviets did is they put their satellites coming from the South Pole. So they're not coming that you see these things coming out of China coming towards us, but rather you get satellites going off down this way, and they come up from the south, over the South Pole, up over North America. And that's quite deliberate, because America right now in Canada, we have absolutely nothing to view, to radar, to identify anything coming from the south. We have the dew line and all sorts of things of upscale from that in Canada's north. We can see what's coming. We've got the infrastructure built in, but we have nothing in the back door. And so the Koreans may have picked up on this Soviet model to come in and with an EMP strike 100 miles overhead can fry a lot of our infrastructure and therefore render us blind. And while we're blind in that instant, that's when the shells are lobbed in that we can't respond to missiles. That was the Soviet model. Now, Korea, Kim Jong-un doesn't have those type of missiles. Knock on wood, I think, at this stage. Possibly maybe on the coast, but certainly not to inundate all of North America. But certainly, I think the strategy was seen before during the Cold War period with the Soviets. So we're watching that with interest as it unfolds. I guess the final thing I want to talk about, just a little laugh, chuckle, I got this, was the government spent almost $2,000 on Trudeau's cardboard cutouts until they were asked to stop. And so I guess that'd be a collector's item right now, wouldn't it? Well, let's go into the business part too. It's in our local paper here. Certainly in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, this is the 25th anniversary of the Westray mining disaster, where 26 miners were buried alive in the coal mines down there. And it draws me for a minute that we shouldn't lose sight of the people who put themselves in harm's way for us every day. Yes, coal miners go down and dig below ground for us, police officers, soldiers, etc. That they don't have the luxury of sitting in a warm office like most of us do. So it's a chance to pause and look at that today. This was interesting. It was brought to attention by one of our colleagues who's with the military and at the sharp end right now with all the flooding going on and doing emergency planning, that last night the nuclear waste tunnel in Washington State failed. Apparently there's been no damage, no leaks at this point, but it was plutonium nuclear weapons during World War II were made, and all the residual stuff were buried underground, and they just sit there, and to date nothing is leaching out or causing concern, according to the reports we're getting. But it does trigger the thoughts to us for a few minutes about the importance of the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire, that area that runs all the way from Japan up across the Bering, all the way down this area, right straight down to South America along the coast, has been very active. Lots of little tremors. We had over 100 tremors, I think we reported last week, up in the Anchorage, northern part of BC area, tremors and shakes going on of minor nature, and they're still continuing. And so it's something to watch for, but particularly important when you look at where we build our, particularly in the States, where they build the nuclear reactors, are along the Ring of Fire. And we saw evidence of that in Japan, that the two nuclear facilities there that went down, in Fukushima, that they were on the Ring of Fire. And as I understand it, it's still going on. There's still a meltdown taking place, and it's dangerous. It hasn't busted through yet. But the water that they're cooling it off with is leaching out into the Pacific, and radioactivity is coming out into the Pacific. And we're getting all sorts of anomalies in fish and poultry coming out of the Pacific. And I have to say that in our family, we're doing more eating of the Atlantic product of mussels and salmon and things of that, clams of that nature, that I'm suspect of what is leaching up on our shores. But according to reports, it's safe and it's not a problem. We don't have to worry about it. Manitoba's talking about east-west power grid. Part of our infrastructure right now, we're meant to be servicing this like in BC. Our lines run generally down south into California and supply electricity to California, and the Site C Dam comes to mind, which is an irritant. But Manitoba and a bunch of other provinces say it's time to start thinking east-west on running our power grids. Not that we have to send it down and buy back on this side of the North American continent, but to move it across. And there's merit for that, but it leads me too into the importance when we do this. We should make sure we harden this new infrastructure going in for power grids for things like the EMP. They can be hardened to mitigate the damage of some sort of an EMP situation. This is an opportunity for us to do it. It also raises the question on the cost of that. The idea of the interprovincial trade barriers that are in place, just take from one province to the other, of bringing liquor across the border, or cigarettes across the border, or trucks that don't have the lights in the right position, or the width of trucks, or the weights of trucks. It just goes on, and it's billions of dollars it costs Canadians at the bottom line when we buy our products, because we haven't got free trade between provinces. We could talk a bit about that. The teachers' pension plan, which are big holders, they had something like... Let me find the number here. It was a big number. In any event, the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan have joined in with a bunch of other institutional investors going after Bombardier. You recall the individuals there that after getting a handout of about $1.3 billion, which has been going on for decades, getting handouts from the federal and from the province of Quebec, the chairman and a bunch of other executives decided to give themselves significant raises, big raises, and they had to roll it back because the people just wouldn't stand for it. And as a result of that, they're having the shareholders meeting, and the BC Investment Management Corporation, which is the one that all municipalities in the province of BC, rather than individually sort of hold their money when tax season comes in and try to invest it in the corner bank, get better return if they cluster that money in one bank account under this organization. So all municipalities belong and send the surplus cash into there, and that organization invests in things like this and get a better return for them, and then they have a set up as needed to draw it back out. So they too had nearly 7 million shares of Bombardier as part of their plan. And that's been threatening because Bombardier could have gone bankrupt and we could have lost that. So we should be watching closely. But anyway, that's the teacher's pension plan. We could talk in terms of shareholder activism, getting involved, and we could talk about the CEOs and what's the appropriate remuneration for CEOs. Canada plans to end its snub on the UN Workers' Rights Treaty. It's been 68 years Canada has not ratified the international treaty that affirms labor as rights of worker. That's the ability to set up a union. And finally, we've agreed to show our support. The right to organize has come out, and up to that point, we said our charters of right and freedom, etc., would be good enough to allow them the chance to have a union. But we're going to sign on. If we do that, it will make us more acceptable, I guess, to other nations when we deal with them that we're a member of the club. Lots about elections in here today, but anti-Semitic incidents are rising in Canada, according to the report in here. The Jewish Advocacy Group said it's made in Canada, that we've had a 25% increase from 2015. 25% increase. Yeah. Sorry, that's over 35 years. There's been a 25% increase. And they include in that anti-Semitic harassment, vandalism, and violence occurring every day. But they said the bulk of that really is that it's Holocaust denial, that people say the Holocaust didn't happen. Of course, we hear a lot from Iran that's the case, but certainly it's an issue that is, they say, as more and more Islamic extremists are co-opting this position and spreading the rhetoric of denial, especially within Arab languages media right here in Canada. So they're going after the Arab media in Canada, that seems with greater frequency, talking in terms of the Holocaust didn't exist. A good topic for us to talk this week is about the $15 hour minimum wage. A good article in here about poverty, and currently in BC alone, considering we're only about 4.5 million people, 600,000 of those people live below the poverty level. 600,000. And even of that, 350,000 of that number are actually working, doing minimum jobs at minimum wage. What's that? $11.25 an hour, $11.25. That's what they get, $11.25 an hour. 350,000 work at that level, but they're still below the poverty. They're trying to make it, but they just can't make it. It's not high enough. And so they're suggesting that we need to do something with the minimum wage goes up, and therein lies the challenge between the business and the individual needs the right to live and to have a. In fact, they point out here cars cost in 1974 $2,200 bought you a nice car. In 2014, it took $33,000 to buy that car. A postage stamp in 74 was 8 cents. Today it's 85 cents. BC Homes in that day was $39,000 in 74. And we've been holding conversations with the price of a modest home is today. And so it's these sort of things that are causing jobs and what we're going to have to do about it. But they laid out some options. They said things you might consider is government creating income tax credits for industries that are disproportionately affected by the increase. Reduce corporate taxes. That's what Trump is doing in the States. Cutting WorkSafe BC and other employer costs. Certainly WCB, it's crazy. So many cents per 100 for particularly in the construction industry. It's a mammoth bill, and that impacts on the efficiencies and the well-being of our industries and production. Increase the amount of commission paid to small business for collecting provincial sales tax. So they got some thoughts. But this week we could talk about is $11.25 enough for a family to get by on, and or is it part of that Internet of Everything we're talking about? That this is just the tip of the iceberg. Increasingly, that gap between those that are working and those that aren't working is growing, and the Internet of Everything is going to accelerate that. We're going to have this large working poor, and there come a point they're not going to take it anymore. So we've got to be proactive. We just can't sit and react when the thing festers. We've got to start thinking today about how we're going to accommodate with a guaranteed annual income or something of that nature. But we just can't let this continue. We can't have 600,000 people out there trying to make a living and not working. Site C Dam is a mistake. Again, back in the paper again today, $9 billion more in debt for the Site C Dam. Another $1 billion in fines coming from the federal government because we environmentally breached some rules. And again, they make the point here, wind power, and they said that we're destroying enough agricultural land to feed 1 million people. Is what we're flooding. 1 million people could be fed on the land we're flooding. Innovation, housing, interesting here. But the same. In fact, we talked about that. Somebody raised it on the site that the Chinese are very innovative this way. That they're short land space in some of the urban areas. So what they do is they go to the people that own these farms on the periphery and say, let's establish a price for it. You give us the land so we can have developers come here and develop. And in return for what's being developed, we'll give you free or whatever one of the units in the place or two of the units in the place. It was a quid pro quo, a trade-off. And I thought certainly maybe the time has come for us to consider that model here in Canada. Can we go to folks that are sitting on agricultural land that have been rezoned or could be rezoned or other tracts of land? Is there a way that we can do a quid pro quo and somehow satisfy their needs and what they want and get access to this land? Because developers are having a hard time in Victoria finding enough land to build on. And we bless Ontario to step forward with a universal pharmacare plan, but it's the light one. It's for the young folks. But they've announced they're going to have a publicly funded pharmacare system for children and youth. Now, of course, children and youth don't use an awful lot of drugs, so compared to us old farts, but it's good. It's a stepping stone. It's a start. They're turning their mind towards it. And I think it's symbolic. I think they're going to pressure our federal government into coming along with them. The time has come maybe to look at that. And they're saying that the benefits for us for this universal plan, if we put it in, first would be that essential medicines would be, they see it as a human right. They say that it would save lives by getting seniors and those that can't afford the drugs would now get their drugs. It would save some lives. It would save billions of dollars every year on the price differentials and things because the volumes we'll be buying and that and the prices we negotiate would be good. It would help Canadian businesses in the sense of the private insurance plans, whatever we pay, are much higher this way. And they say if we did a universal plan, the cost could be under control and bring them down. And so it was a good thought about the idea of a universal pharmacare plan and something to discuss this week. And of course, the elections that we talked about a few minutes ago were of interest. That as I say, until they get the absentee ballots in, and this Courtney Colemox finally gets resolved. But it's an interesting time that we could actually have an NDP government, and the Green Party saying, I want 3 seats at the table if you want to be Premier. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks for us to watch here. Finally, South Korea got a new leader, Moon. Interesting that he did it, but what's more interesting is we have the Korean Peninsula heating up and the Americans pulling in and getting positioned, and every time I read something I can see them getting positioned. The bits and pieces are falling into place, linking in. But Moon has come out and quickly said, no, stop. He migrated from North Korea. He's got family in North Korea, and has simply said, no, if you don't mind, stop for a minute. We're going to try to ease back a little bit. We're going to try to do some more negotiating. They've got a center that both North and South Korea work at, sort of light industrial center, to do some work together and build some things, and that's been frozen under the old leadership. But now he said we're going to open that back up again, just to try to get to hold a hand out across the aisle, so to speak, to see if we can't do better. And so he's basically sending the message back to Trump. It's in Bloomberg this week too. That just cool your jets for a minute. We're not in a rush to go to war, and I know Japan will be concerned about that, and other nations in the area. So, watch Moon. That's going to be interesting. What's going to happen in South Korea? And so I think that's everything that for today we could discuss. I'm going to leave you some thoughts if I can. First, I encourage you that 20 minutes I said you absolutely must do. You want to be a strategist, you've got to close your door for 20 minutes. Don't be interrupted. Read the paper, sit, look at the ceiling, but think critically about thoughts. I've been doing this class and starting. You'll find that will drive you and stand you in good stead, and will move you from managers, administrators into leadership roles if you've got something between your ears that you can come up with. So I encourage you to keep up the process. I said in this class that if you want to be successful in life, there's 3 things you have to do, and I just want to underscore those again if I can. The books, there's 15 minutes a day, and 15 minutes times 30, 31 days, that's 7 to 8 hours a month you have to read. You can read a book a month, but read the books that are germane to your industry. You want to be a strategist? Read books on strategy. If you want to be an entrepreneur, read books on entrepreneur. You want to be in the healthcare industry and government, not-for-profit, read books on that, but read books. The second thing we want to do is to set those goals that are measurable, that how you're going to get from here to there, that you're going to read a book a month. Set goals and achieve those goals. That'll make you successful. And finally, surround yourself with like-minded people that are interested and achievers and upbeat and positive, and have that same passion for learning. Find those people. That's why Silicon Valley is so popular down there, that like-minded people all go to Silicon Valley and they drink the same bathwater, they talk to each other at coffee clashes, but they learn from each other, the interaction. Hollywood does the same sort of thing, make movies, they all come and cluster in the same way. So find your own little cluster of friends that have the same common interest, and that will help drive you to be successful in life as you do it. EL2, I designed that course for you, your last strategy course that you take, your last residency. Fabulous course. You got a great instructor, Mike Thompson. Mike's been doing it for years now, and will take you through it. It gives you a chance to have real-life applications to some problem companies will come in and share their thoughts with you and what they need to succeed. And so you'll enjoy that course, and hopefully during that we have a chance to say hello to each other. So finally, I'll just leave you with that you can't change the wind, but you can certainly reset your sails. And having said that, I hope you found the course of value. Sandy and I certainly appreciate the chance to get to know and work with you over this period of time. So until next time, take care. Bye-bye.